All right, good morning, everybody. Give me a second to set this up. And we'll get away. All right, good morning, everybody. Give me a second to set this up. That's crazy. All right, good morning. We're here at Heroes Martial Arts. This is Introduction to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Chapter 4. Meaning that there's 3 chapters before that, which have all been pre-recorded and are up online. So you can continue watching if you haven't seen this before, and then go back and watch those ones. These classes are specially designed if you've never done Jiu-Jitsu before, or if you've done Jiu-Jitsu and you're trying to work with a partner that hasn't done Jiu-Jitsu and you're in shelter in place and you're going out of your mind, you have to work with them, and this is a good place to start off with. So essentially, we've been running through a modified stay-at-home version of our famous Heroes Martial Arts Fundamentals program. Roughly speaking right there, okay? And to pick up right where we left off, we have been working on the mount. And specifically, we talked about mount escapes. Specifically, we talked about the UPA, okay? We're gonna kind of build on that foundation right there. And although I don't like to do the traditional warm-ups that I would do in a regular jiu-jitsu class, I would trust you to either do that before you get in here. Plenty of videos available for that, especially on our webpage right now. Some of these warm-ups, some of these movements are going to be it's that wax on, wax off, really old dated reference to the Karate Kid, but I love that movie, whatever. That is as good as you can get those solo movements, it will translate and help you out in the actual movements when you're working with a partner. So we'll go ahead and start off with bridges right now. Again, I'll repeat this, I'm a ground fighter, not because I like being on the ground, because I know how to use the ground. I know how to focus on the ground, I know how to frame off the ground, I know how to push off the ground. It's my ally, it's my weapon, it's all that good stuff. So I start off with this connection, bringing my feet in close to my body, heels of my feet on the ground, balls of my feet on the ground. The reason, and I always kind of visualize from the ground to my feet, to my knees, to my hips. I'll just go ahead, hold this position right here, lifting up my hips, exhaling, and then come back down. That's a basic bridge. Keep your chin tucked into your chest, because you never want to roll over or head or neck. We'll just do a few of these basic bridges to kind of start off right there, okay? And so it's drilled into your head. I'll say it again, from the ground to your feet, to your knees, to your hips. We're just going to head lifting up and holding off that position. Really useful to remember, if somebody's mounting you and not being fair and trying to strike you, lifting up this way sometimes can help defend, because it's going to make it harder for them to base out. And if it's harder for them to base out, it's harder for them to hit you in the face. A few more times like that. Okay, good. Now we're going to go ahead and a little bit more of a directed bridge right here, this time going over the shoulders. Okay, remember when I say over the shoulder, when we do this bridge, we want to be between our shoulder and our neck right here, our clavicle, our collarbone right there. We want to make sure our sides of our arms aren't touching. Go ahead and alternate left and right like that. I like to do that on the big deep breath principle. Alternating left and right, stretching out, realizing my arms aren't touching. And even though we're not doing a full-fledged warm-up, I like doing these motions right now just because it's good for the core, good for the lower back, extends everything, it feels nice. Okay, left and right. A few more times. And then see I'm staying solidly on the ground, from the ground to my feet, to my knees, to my hips, up and over my collarbone, reaching back, arcing back, making that motion. You get a whole lot of space to do that. A few more. All right, good. That's still not an UPA though. We're gonna go ahead and do our full-fledged UPAs coming up over the top, okay? So go ahead and give yourself some space. And again, from the ground to my feet, from my knees to my hips, up and over my collarbone, and I'll gather myself up. Good posture, shoulders over hips. Simulating that I have somebody on the top of me that doesn't want to leave. Simulating that once I get somebody off the top of me, once I've actually successfully executed my UPA, I'm gonna wind up in their closed guard, so hence I need that good posture, shoulders over hips. Remember, every drill that we ever do have a start, a middle, and a finish, okay? Always finish off in a position of strength and safety or strength and domination. Let's go ahead and alternate left and right, big motions from the ground to your feet, through your knees, your hips, up and over your collarbone, arms and back. Good posture, shoulders over hips, okay? Explosively, remember I'm driving from the ground right there, okay? Boom. Eventually your feet are going to have to leave the ground to pull that off, okay? But all my power is delivered here from my legs, my quads, push off the ground. As I'm connected. Ground through my feet to my knees or hips, up and over. It's a bridge, it's a driving through, it's not a roll, not pulling back. You will never get anybody over if you don't go ahead and keep driving through. Okay? So far, so good. You have a partner, you can go ahead and try this a few times with a partner on top of you. Partner's right here. Top, bottom, doesn't matter to me. Okay? We'll go ahead and go a no resistance version of this right now, alternating left and right. I'm just balanced at this point. I know Trevor's going to go ahead and take me over, and I want that to happen. Close guard. Sometimes you can actually do this drill, but once you're on the bottom, you open up the guard, let the person mount you on top, and just go ahead and alternate left and right. Back to back. Okay. Just go ahead and go through that drill. It's a great way of working with a partner. Getting through that. A few more times of that. Or if you're by yourself, I'm sorry to hear that, you can go ahead and work yourself doing the solo upas and just get the benefit of the information we have going here right now. Okay, a couple more. Are we even? We odd? I don't know anymore. Time and space. Lots of meeting for me lately. Everything is odd. But it's good to have a routine. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have the ability to be in my gi again. Boom. All right. Okay. So that's essentially where we were at last week. As a good warm up right there. Getting back used to the mount. What's the mount again? It's a ground position. One person's on top, one person's on the bottom, but the person on the bottom cannot use their legs for any meaningful offense and defense. Much better much better position. A lot of breath right there. Much better position for the person on top and the bottom. And UPA, what we worked on, that's really all last class, was one way of making our escape. Okay. But now that we demonstrated it was one way of making the escape, we really gave us two methods to do this right there based on weight distribution. Can they move left or right? Okay. Which side do I move over to? Okay. But again, that's all a review from last week. Okay. But that's only one type of escape that we have. Okay. And granted, it's a very important escape to have. Okay. That UPA. You need to have that in your arsenal, but it's clearly not the only thing that's going to get you out. Building on things right there. Another escape, another motion, another move that you're going to have to learn is the hip escape. This has a bunch of different names. Hip escape, elbow escape, shrimp move, heavy move, a few other ones like that. I don't know. In a lot of cases, different academies, different sources will have different names for it, but they're generally meaning this move, okay? As before, we're going to do this in a solo fashion right now, okay? We'll do the shelter in place. I don't have a lot of space variation right now. So we'll start off here. I'm going to assume that I'm underneath the mount, okay? So when I'm underneath the mount, okay, if I'm visualizing this right now, the first thing I visualize is my safety. Protect my face, protect my neck, protect my arms, protect my position. I'm keeping things tight right now, okay? So I'm protecting myself. Am I safe? Not really, but I need a starting point right now, okay? And because I know I'm about to do this hip escape motion right now, I'm gonna go ahead, plant one foot on the ground. Which foot you plant on the ground right now doesn't really matter to me, okay? But similar as we did the bridge, I'll go ahead and kind of pull my heel into myself. I'm laying with my heel of my foot on the ground, the ball of my foot on the ground. But now that I've gone ahead and put one leg on the ground, I'm gonna turn to my side towards my straight leg, and I'm gonna keep turning until the toes of my straight leg are pointed towards the ground. Now you'll notice when I do this as I'm on my side, as the toes of my straight leg are pointing towards the ground, that my opposite leg, the leg that I planted right here, the leg that I made this connection with, heel of my foot on the ground, ball of my foot on the ground, my knee is basically going still straight up to the ground. So there's a little bit of a twist in me right now, okay? I want the heel of my foot on the ground, the ball of my foot on the ground when I do this. So it doesn't do me a whole lot of good to have my leg going one way or the other. Okay, I'm not gonna get a lot of power out of it. But anyway, here I am, I'm on my side, I'm in my safety position, flick my face, neck, arms in position. I'm on my side, my one leg is connected to the ground, heel of my foot on the ground, ball of my foot on the ground. My opposite leg, my straight leg, okay, I'm always angled so my toes are pointing to the ground, so my knee is pointing towards the ground. Whichever direction your toes go, that's where your knee's gonna go, okay? Now, having set this up, here's what the hip escape, the shrimp motion, the ebby, the thing that I'm gonna call a bunch of different names, but you know what I'm talking about. Here's how it works. I push with my bent leg, I scoop my hips back, I'll pull my knee to my chest, okay? What was that again? All at the same time? Push with my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest, and essentially I'm reversing positions, okay? Now that I've done that, my legs are reversed, I'll go ahead and switch, I'll roll to the opposite side, I'll roll, heel of my foot on the ground, ball of my foot on the ground, I'll continue rolling, so my straight leg now, which is now my opposite leg where I start off with, my toes are pointing towards the ground, and I will push with my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest. And my legs are reversed again. So I make that switch, I move all the way to the opposite side, heel of my foot on the ground, ball of my foot on the ground, toes on my straight leg so it's pointing towards the ground, and I will push with my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest, okay? I don't necessarily need a lot of space to do this, okay? But I am gonna be scooting back as I do this, okay? Again, the big details on this are, when I do this move properly, is number one, how well do I connect to the ground? I always ask that question in whatever technique that I do, is what is my best connection to the ground? What do I need connected on the ground? And what doesn't have to be connected to the ground, okay? The main thing that's driving this again is this leg on the ground. Now I kind of emphasize this part. Stomp right there, the heel of my foot on the ground, the ball of my foot on the ground. Without a good connection to the ground, as a ground fighter, I'm kind of in a lost situation right there. Okay, so I'm making sure this is well connected, okay? Also, as I do this, you notice I'm on my side. Being on my side, as I make this motion, as I scoot back, means there's less surface area on the ground. Less surface area means less friction. Less friction is, theoretically, that move should actually be easier, okay? When I do this, I try to do this, I'm more on my torso right here. Because my hands are in position, I'm holding tight right here, I'm staying off of my shoulder at this point. I know a lot of people have tried to do this on the shoulder, and then as they move back, their arm gets planted and it puts them in a weird situation. I'm actually keeping my arm tight to myself. When I make this motion, and as I scoot back, I'm almost kind of curling into myself like I'm doing an ab crunch. I'm really trying to be a little bit more on my torso as opposed to my arm at this point. There's very few times where I ever really want to be planted in my arm like this, okay? Not only is this hard for me to move, I basically nullify what I can do with this bottom arm right now. But when I'm on my side, okay, and I'm moving around, like my torso moves around, I'm actually a bit stronger. This arm is free to frame, to defend, some cases attack, although this is very much a defensive position, as opposed to being here on my arm or on my shoulder. That's very hard to move in this case. So I'm on my side, pulling my arms into myself right here. And you'll see again, toes pointing towards the ground when I make this motion. When I push with my bent leg, I scoop my hips back, I pull my knee to my chest. I want this leg very low to the ground. I want to imagine that there's nothing that gets underneath here. Again, whichever direction your toes go, your knees will go. If your toes are pointing up and you do this, your leg will come up. That'll allow me to scoot back. But in terms of doing the escape that we're about to do, the escape from the mount, what we'll call the elbow escape, it's going to be very hard to do anything if this leg comes up, and I'll explain that in greater detail in a bit. Okay, so that's a shelter in place, or rather, I should say, solo elbow escape drill. Told you I've changed the names a bunch of times, and we have a fairly long academy, fairly long mat space. Oftentimes with the warm-ups, we'll just continue to do that motion. We'll start off the warm-up, and we'll just do one side of the mat, jog back to the other, do it down the side of the mat, jog back, and keep doing it. Okay. But that is as staple of an escape as you can think about right there. Not only in the mount, but you're going to need to know that position. You're going to need to do that escape, that technique, for the majority of your bottom escapes. Okay, for the majority of the times you're in that situation. So that is a good old-fashioned hip escape. And if it's awkward for you right now, it's one of those things that gets better with time. Okay. Now I'll tell you one more thing about that before I move on. Aside from having to start in the finish position, if you really want to drill this in a way that's going to be useful for actually doing escapes, okay, go left, right on this. Like, don't just do this on a one beat and hold and kind of think about it right there. Okay, because that's actually not as useful to you in the escape situation. The motion you're going to go ahead and do is do a two beat right there. I'm going to go left and right as I scoot back. So I'll go ahead, again, safety position. I really try not to use my arms when I do this, okay? So I'm keeping myself tight right there, okay? And I'm going to go ahead, 1, 2, maybe come back to center each time I do that. Okay, but I always do that 1, 2. I always do that shift back 1 and 2 as I do that, because that's going to be more useful to me in the escape. Okay, and each time I do this, it's a 1, 2. It's really 2 moves strung into one. So I want to make sure the setup on each one is correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I turn to the side right now. I'll do 1 completed. Okay, my legs are in position right there. Okay, so that's 1 completed right now. And now I got to set it for the second. I turn, feel my foot on the ground, ball my foot on the ground. I continue turning. I'm on my side. My toes are pointing to the ground. And now I'll go ahead and execute the second. Boom, and I'm back to here. Okay. So again, especially for those of you that have done this a million times before, which I'm sure there's some of you out there that have, especially if you've been training with me for any length of time, you really want to get that rhythm and be able to work both sides right there. It's going to be very critical to your ability to actually pull off this move when it comes to escaping. So I can start off here, and just 1, 2, and it's scooting me back. And especially since we're doing this, I'm assuming you have a little bit more limited space than I do. I did that to my right side and my left side first. Like I said, anytime you have a defensive technique, you want to work things to both sides. Why? Well, I do believe in your ability. You have to be able to work things on both sides. On offense, though, you usually get to pick which side you go to, and you'll go to your stronger side, at least to start off with. On defensive maneuvers, and this is absolutely a defensive maneuver, a lot of times you don't have that luxury to pick which side is your favorite side on that. You pick the side that's available. You pick the side that's going to you right there, okay? So you can go ahead, kind of go ahead and learn how to break that rhythm and learn how to work things. We can do this to the opposite side right now. So I'll do it right, left as opposed to left, right. That makes sense. So I'll go ahead, 1, 2, do the same motion and then reset right there. So it's a good way to make that drill. If you have limited amounts of space, if you can't, don't have the benefits of a whole academy of meters and meters and meters, go ahead and do that motion down on that right there, okay? Just go 1, 2, left, right, or right, left, reset, left, right, left, reset, etc., etc. right there, okay? But that is absolutely a staple motion within Jiu Jitsu, and not just the mount escape we're going to deal with right now. This will come in very much handy for, well, most of your bottom escapes, okay? So that is the Ebby, the shrimp, the hip escape, whatever. We'll come back to that in a second, okay? We'll come back to that in a second because I got to talk a little bit more about the mount, okay? I need to talk a little bit more about the mount. Trevor, if you can have your head pointed this way, your feet pointed towards me, or vice versa, one of the others, people can see you, get a little bit closer right there. So we talked about the mount in the sense that the mount is a ground position. One person's on top, one person's on the bottom, but the person on the bottom cannot use the legs for offensive and defensive purposes, okay? Really good position for me, really bad position for Trevor, no matter how you slice it. But there are always variations within the position, okay? There's always different ways we can look at this, and always variations we can do this. Okay, everything we do is there's a high position and a low position. There's always a high position and a low position on this, okay? Oops, let me just do something real quick. There we go. Okay, high is when I work up towards the shoulders. Low is when I work down towards the hips, okay? Low tends to be easier to get to, easier to maintain, but in some ways you compromise either your offensive capabilities or the suffering of the person on the bottom. Sometimes, that's a rule of thumb. Whereas top tends to be harder to get to, or high, I should say, towards the shoulders. In any of the positions tends to be harder to get to, harder to maintain, but the reward is you get better offensive capabilities off of this. Again, it's a very much a generalization on this, but it's a good way to look at this right there. I tend to think of my positions either being low or high. So far we have talked about the mount, and we really haven't talked about like the variation of what type of mount we're working, okay? But now we're gonna go ahead and be a little bit more specific about this, okay? Usually when I get a mount, or maybe I should be more clarified this, usually when I show somebody the mount for the first time, I suggest trying for a low mount because it's easier to get to and easier to maintain, okay? So that means we're gonna be focusing down towards the hips, okay? So I have this mount, and I'm gonna go ahead and be heavy on Trevor's hips, okay? But for the continuation of this, okay, thinking about my body mechanics right there, how heavy can I be with my hips? How good is my weight distribution? If I'm sitting right here, I'm more on my legs. So I'll actually go ahead and kind of drive down and kind of thrust my pelvis on top of Trevor's pelvis. My hips are on top of his hips right there, and I'm really gonna try to be heavy here, okay? At the same time I do this, as I'm kind of dropping down and almost flatten myself out, for lack of better words, okay? Let's move on to the legs. We're gonna do what's known as a grapevine position right here, where my legs are underneath Trevor's legs, okay? My heels come up and I point my toes inwards in this case, okay? Now here's an important piece, so rotate around here for a second. When we do this, whenever I do this low mount, whenever I get my legs here, there's two things that I don't want to do. Okay, well, let me talk about the thing I like to do. I like my heels to be up, and I like my toes facing inwards in this case. Okay, heels up, toes facing inwards. Okay, that's the proper way, or that's the safer way to go ahead and get one of these low mounts. I know a lot of people like to do these grapevines, like but their legs are flailed out this way, their toes are out. I wouldn't recommend that, because as Trevor goes ahead and tries to escape, he pushes my legs down hard. There's going to be a twisting action here that's going to put pressure on my ACL, okay? And your ACL, my ACL, your ACL too, is something that I'm pretty protective of, okay? You don't want to take stress on that. You certainly don't want to tear that. That will put you on the shelf at a minimum 6 months, at least a year, okay? So I'm very protective of my ACL. You never want to do anything that you feel like pressure. A little bit closer to the camera, that you're feeling it on the outside of your leg. Your ACL is here on the outside of your leg, on the side of your leg right there. That will ruin your jiu-jitsu game. That will ruin your season. Like look what happened to Klay Thompson or the Warriors. Yeah, that's an injury that some people don't ever fully come back on, okay? So I never do anything that stresses that. So it's always toes pointed in, never toes pointed out, okay? That just keeps you safe from this. The other thing that I always try to do when I do this, okay, is I don't cross my ankles here. I know that crossing your ankles, a lot of you might feel like, oh, it's harder to make the escapes, it's harder to get out right there. Look, if I cross my ankles, and let's say Trevor tries to loop and he tries to bridge, and my cross ankles go underneath his hips and he slams down right now, he can actually break my ankles at this point, okay? I'm very vulnerable if my ankles cross at this point if he drops the weight down. Okay? Almost in the same way for those of you who have experience that you know that you don't cross the ankles when you're on your back because there's an ankle attack. Well, that attack right there, and there could be an actual attack to mount right there, and it's far more brutal. Could actually go ahead and intentionally break the ankles. And if I wanted to do dirty jiu-jitsu 101 or less clean jiu-jitsu, maybe I should say, yeah. Or if it's MMA, you're trying to punch me in the face, I might intentionally try to break your ankles off of that, okay? But anytime you cross your ankles, okay, especially when there's somebody on top of you, you run the risk of breaking your ankles in that case. So I do not advise crossing your ankles at that spot. So again, hips over hips, and really driving down. I'll have grapevine, okay, legs are underneath Trevor's, heels up, and toes pointed inwards right now, okay? And my hands can be outstretched. All of my weight is really on my hips. Okay, I can spread out my knees. Okay, I'm not really posting off my hands usually when I do this. I'll use this as ballast right here. Okay, if I keep my weight on my hips, if I have my arms extended right here, kind of like airplane mode, it actually should be very difficult to go ahead and do that for me. Okay, let's go ahead and switch so your head's pointing this way so you can see what I do with my hands. Rotate around one more time. Get the 360 view right here. That's the benefits of technology. All right, so again, this low mount, hips over hips, legs outstretched, heels up, toes pointed in, and my hands tend to be outstretched here, okay? And as far as maintaining mounts go, this low mount right here tends to be easier to get to, tends to be easier to maintain, but it's the expense of offensive capabilities. Obviously, when my hands are outstretched this way, it's pretty difficult to go ahead and bring those hands in for any kind of an attack at that point, okay? But if we go through that lines of safety first, then position, then finish, I want to make sure I can go ahead and maintain the position first before I have any type of offense on that right there, okay? So that is a low mount. And again, what the low mount really does is it nullifies my opponent's ability to go ahead and do the UPA. You know that technique we spent all of yesterday working on? Very hard to go ahead and do an UPA when that low mount's in place. Okay, so funny thing about the low mount is I don't have a whole lot more to tell you about the actual maintenance of the position. Okay, got to turn this light on. Some moves, I like to say that there's a lot of nuances and subtleties, and I can tell you a lot of things about how stuff works and what makes things better. Like it better there? Good. Okay, and I can tell you all this type of stuff. Low mount isn't that. Like I basically told you about maintaining the low mount, 99% of what I know about it, like at least 100% of what's important on there. How to maintain it, how to keep yourself safe in there. And if done well, I think you can pick that up pretty quickly. Okay, how to go ahead and maintain that mount. Okay, and I've taught this to like new students before, people brand new to grappling, and they can get that one fairly quickly in terms of maintaining the position. The escape out of the low mount, on the other hand, is a bit more difficult. Okay, if we want to reverse engineer things aside from where the weight is, okay, what's going to make things difficult? You know, I got the weight on there, their hands are outstretched right there. I can't go ahead and bridge. I can't do the oop in this case. So how do I get out of this? It's going to come down to our shrimp move, our ebby, our elbow escape. And if I want to be a little bit more technically correct about this, when I say elbow escape, usually we say like the move solo, we have a bunch of different names for, and that's fine. But when we're talking about mount escapes, we're talking about the elbow escape, typically. Like that's a little bit more universal on this, okay? But something has to happen before I can do the elbow escape right. Let's go ahead, and Trevor puts me in a low mount right now. Let's get back in here. And even though he has less offense right now, yeah, I don't know if you can see these things, I'm pretty sure you can't. Okay, I still have to protect my face, protect my neck, protect my arm, protect my position. I never want to put myself in a place where I compromise my safety, or I have to be very careful about how I compromise my safety. If I start flailing and going crazy here, my hands are outstretched. Yeah, it gives him all kinds of opportunities for his offense, his strikes, his chokes, even his arms, if I'm not, or my arms rather, if I'm not careful about this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. See on this angle right here, I'm protecting my face, neck, arms in position. Okay. But right now, Trevor's just thinking about how he's maintaining the position. He has this low mount, he's heavy on my hips, he has this grapevine right now, and his arms are outstretched. Again, really hard for him to get offense in here, but really hard for me to get out. What I'm gonna have to do to get out of this right now is I'm gonna go ahead and have to get rid of the grapevines. I only really have to get rid of one of the grapevines in this, okay? That's the good news on this. I only have to get rid of one of the grapevines to get rid of one of these legs. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go ahead and straighten out a leg, and I'm gonna try to push Trevor's leg down to the ground, okay? The lower Trevor's leg is to the ground, the easier it is gonna be for me to escape. The higher his leg happens to be, if he brings his heels way up, this is gonna be difficult because I'm gonna have to lift my legs up like here to get out, okay? It's not easy, okay? None of this is ever easy. I've never used the word easy on this. I'll just say it's easier the lower his leg is to the ground. And notice when I do this, I'll tend to go ahead and reach out, I'll extend out with my leg, I'll lead with the heel, and I'll go ahead and push down this way. So I have his leg lower to the ground, or low to the ground, okay? But as long as his leg is underneath my leg, I'm still gonna have some difficulties right now. So once I get it low, I'm gonna have to go ahead and get his leg out from underneath me, okay? And the easiest way to do that is make the shift and bring it in and out. And when I bring this in, notice that I keep my leg very straight. I keep this low to the ground. Because if I ever bend my leg at this point, I guarantee you Trevor's going to go ahead and bring this back underneath. And now that he's looking out for that, it's going to be much harder for me to get my leg escaped. Okay? It's going to be much harder for me to get his leg out from underneath me. So I'm going to go ahead low. See how I straighten out my leg? I push this down. I'm going to go lower. I'll just bring this in. And I'm going to make sure that Trevor can't get back out underneath my leg. Okay? So far, so good. And granted, he's being compliant. He's making it look easy. But that's what I need to do. Okay? Now that I've gotten ahead and got my leg lower, I need to get lower still. Like my escape's going to be if I can get underneath Trevor's leg at this point. Okay? If I can get underneath Trevor's leg, or if I can get underneath his foot more specifically, I'll have a better chance for an escape. Let's get a little bit closer. Get here so you can see what's going on. Granted, I can do this to either side, but I can't show it to either side where we're at. So I'm going to go low, lower. Now I got to get even lower still. I got to get underneath Trevor's leg. There are a couple of ways I can do this right here. Okay, I could use my opposite leg. Right now you're seeing my right leg. My left leg can come into play. And I can go ahead, switch over, use my heel, and drag that across. You see I just pulled Trevor's foot over my leg, planting my foot on the ground, trapping it right here. This sets me up for a good elbow stick. Okay? That's one way of doing it. Sometimes instead of leading with the heel, I'll lead with the toes. I'm going to be pretty flexible. I can go with the toes first, lift this up, bring my leg underneath, and I like to go ahead, plant my foot in. I'm essentially in hip escape position. So essentially here right now. So I'm trapping Trevor's foot. And you notice when I do this, again, I'm turning a bit to my side right now, a little bit to my side. The toes of my straight leg are pointing towards the ground. At any point my knee comes up, if I'm not careful about this, Trevor's going to bring the leg underneath, and I got a lot more work to do. So it's down, low, lower, and again, I can use this opposite foot, heel, toe. Doesn't really matter, whatever's easy for you, whatever works out for the situation, and I get underneath. Okay? A couple more ways to do this. There's that skin a cat is like we were saying right there, but there's always like multiple ways to do this. Sometimes I can combine work with a bit of a bridge. Okay? Notice small bridge. This bridge isn't to try to get Trevor over, because I know I'm not getting Trevor over because of the way his arms are. But sometimes this small bridge, sometimes right now pushing off my left foot, this leg is on the ground, while keeping my right leg on the ground. Okay, so I'm pushing off my left leg. Slight little bridge, slight little bump in the ground to my foot, from my knees to my hip. Okay, and sometimes that gets him to lift his leg up and I can scoop underneath him right now. And once I get that, I'll try. Okay. We'll talk about more how to combine it with the UPA and switch back and forth, but sometimes I will use that bridge to get underneath. It's a natural tendency for a lot of people to, when they get bridged, is that foot comes up. Okay, this foot comes up. You can watch Trevor's foot right here. Like I give this a little bit of a bridge, and a lot of times that leg comes up. Okay, so I can get underneath it. There is one other way to do this, and I'll be honest, I do this sometimes, although I don't recommend it. If I want to get underneath this leg, if I need to get his leg up. I'm not gonna lie, I do that sometimes, but there is a compromise when I do this. Notice when this hand comes down to grab that right here, this means that my hand isn't defending, and if Trevor is savvy at this point, he could use that as a moment of attack, okay? So I will do that sometimes, but I also have to be able to read whatever Trevor's doing really well at that point, but I don't make a habit of reaching there. I would say when you're drilling this, try to use this as much with your legs as possible, okay? And I just have to go ahead and get underneath it, okay? Honestly, in terms of the hip escape right here, in terms of escaping a low mount, getting out from underneath the legs is oftentimes the hardest part, okay? But the good news is I only have to get underneath one. Let's rotate back here for a second. So if you want to do a drill right now to your shelter-in-place partner, you can start off having put you in the low mount right now, okay? And I just have to get out from underneath one of the legs. And sometimes if one leg doesn't work, if he's really good about keeping that in, he's not letting it get in, sometimes I'll switch and go back to the other one and try it that way and get it lower, okay? You can have that little battle right here. Sometimes, okay, instead of just going one and then two like this and switching back and forth and seeing which works. Sometimes I'll just throw both of them out right now and see which one works better for me right now, which one seems to stick. And then make my arrangements there. Okay. And I know what I'm doing there, but there is an opportunity to be creative right there. I can go left and right, back and forth, and sometimes simultaneously right there until I get what I want, which is underneath that leg. Like I brought my leg underneath Trevor's leg, BIA the foot right there. Okay? So oftentimes, especially when somebody's really holding on to a good low mount right there when they're doing this, this is oftentimes the harder part about this. But if I can get to the spot where I'm underneath Trevor's leg, I don't want to say I'm home free, but this is the easier part about my elbow escape, okay? So I'll show you in a second, but watch. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that 1, 2, that, in this case, left, right now. Push with my bent leg, scoop my hip back, pull my knee to my chest. 1, 2, and then come back into a full closed guard, okay? I'm essentially moving to the position from the mount, which was obviously a terrible position for me to be in, to the full guard, which is, at least a neutral position as far as I'm concerned, a better position in that sense right there. So that's out left, right, left, and moving back for each one. Okay, now, aside from that shrimp motion, aside from that eddy, aside from that one that we drilled solo, we've done solo a bunch of times, aside from what my lower body's doing, let me tell you what my upper body's doing. Let me give you a couple of other, for lack of better words, tips about that. Trevor, you can go ahead and mount me. Go over here, good. All right. So let's go ahead and make an assumption right now that I've started off on, again, keep myself safe. I protect my face, protect my neck, protect my arms, I protect my position. I really, really, really do try to do this without using my arms, okay? It's not necessary. Again, core, then legs, then arms. But my arms right now are basically defending right now because this position sucks, I'm not safe. And Trevor will definitely be attacking in this case, okay? Or he hasn't attacked mine because he's not directly attacking at this point. I'm like, I can take the hands down here. Now my head and neck really aren't defended at this point. I'm letting Trevor do whatever he wants to. So I'm here, okay? I go ahead, I've worked my way out, low, lower, lowest. I'll have a little bit of a twist right now, okay? Look what I do with my hands if I'm middle, okay? Now, when I do this hip escape, when I push with my bent leg, I scoop my hips back, I pull my knee to my chest. The goal is to get my knee, which is behind Trevor's leg, in front of Trevor's leg. That's as far as I need to go. Okay, I don't have to go super far on this, but I have to go at least that far right there. Sit up right now. Bring that arm up. Okay, I just have to make sure that my knee, which is behind Trevor's knee, I should just rotate here for a second, gets in front of Trevor's leg right now. Okay, when I do a motion, know this, it's always relative to my opponent. Okay, so what I mean by that is like I might have the best motion in the world. Okay, I might be able to pull my knee to myself, but if I don't stop Trevor's knee from moving up right here, then I didn't do my job. The motion was wasted. It doesn't matter at this point, okay? Motion is always relative to your opponent. That's why it's always good to have an opponent or a partner to work with right there. You have to understand how this works. If Trevor can go ahead, if I do this, push my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest, and his leg comes up to here, I'm in trouble. Or at the very least, I'm still in that same position. I really didn't accomplish anything at this point, okay? So you always have to realize, again, all movement that I do within Jiu Jitsu, okay, against an opponent is relative to how my opponent moves too. And the relative goal is my leg is behind him right now. My knee specifically is behind Trevor right now. I have to get it to the front, okay? And I'm going to stop Trevor's leg from moving by two fashions. Number one is how I have this opposite leg and I'm trapping his ankle here. That might be a little bit right there. It helps keep him from sliding up and getting into a better position. The other thing I'm going to do, here comes where the name elbow escape comes in, although I prefer forearm, calling it a forearm escape, but let's not mix that up, is this bottom hand right here, okay? I like to go ahead, place my forearm here on Trevor's leg. So now when I do this, when I push my legs back, when I push with my bent leg, I scoop my hips back, I pull my knee to my chest, Trevor's leg stays relatively in the same place. Boom, this allows me to get my leg to the same side, or my near side right there, okay? This is what I need to do, okay? So, oops, here we go. But again, I'm holding Trevor at two places. Number one, how I'm holding him at the ankle, and number two, how I'm holding him here at the knee. Doesn't have to be a big motion. I don't even have to push Trevor's leg down. I just have to make sure that Trevor's leg doesn't move up as I move my leg up, okay? I should tell you something else. I'm inherently lazy. Like, if there's an efficient way of doing something, or if I have to do less work on here, I'm going to do less work. So I don't have to push Trevor's leg down to get this. As a matter of fact, this would be a terrible way to do this. I'm just here with my forearm, just making sure his leg doesn't move up. And again, push with my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest, and get to this side. And again, the detail of keeping my toes pointing towards the ground, my knee scrapes against the ground. Look, I'm not going to get a whole lot of room to get underneath here. Whichever direction my toes goes, my knees go, my knee comes up, I'm clearly not going to get underneath Trevor's leg at this point. So I'm here. Push with my bent leg, scoop my hips back, pull my knee to my chest. One, turn all the way through. Two, the second time will always be easier. I'm going to drill. I always want to get to a full guard on this. Scoop back, and I'll actively go after that closed guard. It comes back to that practicing that left, right, right, left. Do this on a 2 beat, not a 1 beat, because I'm aiming to get to a full guard, not a half guard. Half guard, if we go through this course, will be quite some time down the road. I never aim for a half guard. I always aim for a full guard, because if I miss the full guard, well, then I'll be in a half guard and I know how to work from there. If I aim for a half guard and I miss the half guard, you know where I'm at? I'm still underneath the side control, okay? What do they say? Shoot for the stars and it'll land on the moon, or I don't. But shoot for stars will go far on this. I shoot for a complete motion right there. And if I screw up, at least I'll wind up in half guard. But maybe that's a little bit more. Maybe it's okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind of how that hand position is. Let me show you something about the other hand position as we do this. Again, I'm here. I protect my face. I protect my neck. I protect my arms. I protect my position. Let's go ahead, and I've gone through, and I've done this right now. And the same side that I have the leg trapped, my left arm is doing the keeping Trevor's leg from moving. Again, I don't have to push him as much as I need to hold his leg in place. I'm going to be doing the work on this. I know I said I was lazy on this, but I shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. But I'm basically trying to create some distance between Trevor and myself. I'm trying to pull this knee up. I don't have to push him away. Okay. Now, this hand right here, I'm usually sitting here trying to keep myself safe. I'll tell you this right now. If I have to push off with this hand, if I have to put this anyplace, I will always put it on the same side hip, okay, relative to me. So my right hand is going on Trevor's left hip at this point. I keep my elbow tight to myself. This is a really, really, really important detail. This is where I think a lot of people will mess this up. Because if you think you're going to go ahead and shove back, if I go ahead and cross over and put both hands to the side, you know what Trevor's going to do? He's going to go after my back at that point. Okay? So for a second. That is essentially jumping out of the fire into the frying pan if I give up my back, particularly when I'm mounted. Like, there's not a worse position on this, okay? One of the definitions I'll give you of a good position right now is if my opponent's facing towards me and my opponent's not facing towards me. Wait, let me rephrase that. I don't know, make it better. It makes sense in my brain. Sometimes it doesn't come out well in the mouth, okay? A good position is I always want my opponent to be in front of me. I never want to be in front of my opponent, okay? And when I say never want to be in front of my opponent, okay, vice versa, okay, good rule in jiu-jitsu is I always like to keep my opponent within my arms right here, aka the so-called horns of the bull. So if Trevor's here and he's in between my arms, okay, basically he's centered up with me right now, and I have more ability to manipulate and work him at this point. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense from that angle. However, if my hands ever cross over the center lines like so, then essentially I'm giving Trevor a path to my back. And trust me, Trevor's a back hunter. If I give him that ability to do that, I'm in deep trouble at this point. Okay, and that's pretty much any situation. It might have been a great situation to a bad situation. Or it'll make a bad situation even worse if I show off my back in that sense, okay? So when I do this move, okay, I'm coming back to my hip escape. I'm going ahead and holding here, foot. My near, in this case, my left arm is here blocking the leg so it doesn't come up further right here. Sometimes I need that extra push. I'm not gonna lie, it's always relative to who you're dealing with, but it's always on the same side right now so I don't give up my back. So relatively speaking, Trevor's still within my arms, so I'm protecting my back in this case. And then it's push with my bent leg, scoop my back, pull my knee to my chest, clear that leg. I turn to the opposite side, push my bent leg, scoop my back, pull my knee to my chest, and aggressively go after that full guard, okay? The elbow escape is not done. The drill isn't done until we get back to a full guard, okay? But I'm doing this in a way, not only do I want to get out of this move or the situation, the move position, being underneath the mount, I also don't want to put myself in a worse situation. I don't want to give up my back. That's a death sentence in jiu-jitsu. I certainly don't want to leave myself vulnerable to attack, okay? I'm always thinking, again, I'm going to say this till it's drilled in your head, safety first, then position, then finish, okay? I'm very careful about compromising my safety to move on to the finish, to move on to the attack, okay? I'm always thinking in that order right there. Again, start here. Trevor had break the grapevine on one side, I get underneath this leg, and I'm going to do this on this 1-2 beat right here. The second beat should be easier than the first, but I'm going to go ahead and just basically automatically do this. I'm going to do this so it's habit and drills into my head. Push my bent leg, scoop my back, pull my knee, chest, 1, 2, and I'm actively going into a closed low guard. Okay, essentially move from position of, I won't call it straight into safety because it's obviously a terrible position to be in, but I have a starting point and a finishing point. Any drill, anything that I ever do, I have a start point and a finish point. I'll work through that, okay? But like I said, I think the harder part about that elbow escape right there is being able to get underneath your opponent's leg. If you can get underneath your opponent's leg, then the actual ability to execute the elbow escape will be easier. You can drill, actually, again, that elbow escape in solo, in private, or whatever, without a partner, just this solo motion right here. Just 1, 2. But obviously to escape out of the grapevine, you're gonna need somebody with legs. Sorry for those of you that don't have legs or don't have a partner with legs, I guess. Okay, you're gonna need to have that in order to really kind of learn how to do the elbow escape. Now, honestly, between these 2 days, which I've kind of stretched out this lesson, the elbow escape and the upas are my 2 main mount escapes right there. In fact, 95% of the time when I get mounted, probably even more than that, those are my 2 go-to escapes right there. Do I have a couple more escapes from there? Yeah, but I don't consider them, at least for myself, high percentage escapes. Okay. I consider my upa to be high percentage because I've done this over and over again. And I consider my elbow escape to be high percentage because I've done that over and over again. But there's also the sense that if one technique doesn't work, another one will follow up, another one will be easier to do. Okay. In the same way that we had the upa, that I can either go left or right, depending on how my opponent shifts their weight, I can also switch between upas and elbow escapes, depending on how tightly my opponent's holding on and what I'm able to do to them at that point, okay? So essentially I have 2 escapes. I actually have 4 paths, or 2 technical escapes, or 2 techniques. With my ability to do things left and right, I actually have 4 escapes out of it. And again, 99% of the time, if I somehow get mounted, which happens, those are my 2 go-to escapes. I don't have a whole lot more that I like to personally do off of this, okay? But again, my question is not only how well I do each of those techniques, it's my understanding of the timing of those techniques. What is the right time to do each technique? You can come back here to a low mount. Right here, and he's going through right now. I might have tried the upa first. A lot of people try that upa first, but as long as Trevor's keeping his weight well here, as long as his arms are outstretched right there, okay, getting the upas is going to be difficult at this point. Okay, not impossible, but definitely difficult with the arms out right there. So I'll go back and I'll go try the elbow escape at this point. So I'll go ahead and start firing off. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to get the legs down right now and see how this works. Okay, sometimes that means, well, it always means that Trevor's going to go ahead and make his adjustments and defend accordingly right now. So now he's focusing and really trying to go ahead and keep those grapevines in right now. His legs are tight. Okay, as his legs get tight right here, it also means it's removed his ability to kind of post out with this, his ability to go ahead and defend in a meaningful way in this sense. So I'll fight here, but it also means because he's defending so heavy with his legs against the elbow escape, he's more vulnerable to the upa, with the exception of the arms, okay? So since he's here, since he's just looking at maintaining the position he's holding right there, I'm thinking of a way to get in this arm. I gotta create ways to get in this arm. We discussed this yesterday, but watch. I can go ahead, reach and trap. See how I did this? I just came out from outside in, put this behind my head. His legs are trapped. His arm is now trapped. So I'll go ahead and make a modified upa or bridge, or it's actually not even a modified upa or bridge. It's the same upa or bridge. I'll look to that direction from the ground through my feet, through my knees, through my hips, up and over my collarbone. And then quickly I'm gonna battle back to a good posture right here, okay? So I'm not saying I used one move per se to set up the other move. Okay, I don't feint or jab in jiu-jitsu in the same way that we do in some of the striking arts. Okay, I really want to do my elbow escape first. I really want to get underneath that leg. And if I could get underneath the leg, I would have done my elbow escape. Okay, I don't halfway anything when I do jiu-jitsu. Like I do the move to a completion, or I try my best to get it. And again, the move will either work because I did it right, or it won't work because I did it right, but my opponent knows the defense, okay? And in the case when they know the defense and they react accordingly, it usually opens up something else. In fact, no, I'm gonna say it always opens up something else, okay? So that's an example. I can go from an elbow escape to an upa, okay? By the same fashion, or yeah, if I'm trying to set up the bridge right there, and maybe I didn't trap Trevor's leg in the correct way, so I go ahead and I trap an arm, and I go ahead and try this bridge to his side. Yeah, he posts up on the ground right now. Now I can't bridge him, okay, or upa, but he's also made himself very vulnerable to the elbow escape. Now, as you play around with your partner, as you go back and forth, as you kind of figure things out, you will see the opportunities, okay? There is always an opportunity for an escape, there's always an option if you're willing to look for it, if your mind is kind of open enough to be able to see this. You know, ideally you want to get to a point where you don't have to think about doing the techniques. I'll say things, fly in my face. I'll say things and I'll repeat in my head. I don't really have to think about how to do an UPA at this point, or an elbow escape for this matter. It's reflexive. I've done this a bunch of times. I can just go ahead and do it. The how isn't too difficult. The when, on the other hand, is something that I'm always kind of fine tuning, think about when is the appropriate time to go do each technique. When is the appropriate time for the OPA? When is the appropriate time for the elbow escape? When do I go left? When do I go right? Okay, and I always have to kind of keep that in mind as I'm doing things, of which way I'm going back for it. That's really where the art of training and working with somebody comes into right there. Okay, now in terms of resistance drills right now, I'm playing around with this. We can play this a couple of different levels, particularly if you're out of work with the experienced person versus the less experienced person. Okay, so one way of making this drill right now is I can go ahead from the mount, okay, or making this a drill for the person I'm working with if they have less experience, or sometimes even if they have more experience, is in this particular case, we've determined there's 4 different escapes we could have made. We can make an UPA left, we can make an UPA right, we can make an elbow escape left, we can make an elbow escape right, and we can use those 4 escapes to get out, okay? So if I'm the top person, go ahead and talk for a second, and I'm working with somebody right now, I can determine that I'm going to vigorously defend one of those options, UPA left, UPA right, elbow escape left, elbow escape right, and I'll leave 3 of the options open, okay? So for example, if I start off right here, and I might be right here, I'm really going to defend the UPA to one side really hard. If Trevor tries to UPA to the opposite side right there, he's never going to get it to that side, okay? He's got to be open enough to realize like, ooh, this isn't going to work at this point because my opponent's defending. But as much as I'm defending to one side, it's going to be easier for him to get to the other. And a lot of times when you defend something, here's one of the either good news, bad news, depending on how you look at it from a jiu-jitsu perspective. The harder and more vigorously one thing is defended, the harder and more vigorously it is to do one technique. Oftentimes something else is not only available, it's become easier because the setups work this way. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it right there. And I can go ahead and change my level of resistance on this, okay? Instead of being super obvious and only defending 1, leaving 3 open, maybe I'll defend 2. Maybe I'll defend 3 things right there and leave 1 opening and see if my partner can't figure that out, okay? And I can adjust my level, okay? Literally, like, you know, I can adjust my level numerically by how many ways I'm going to defend and which openings I'm going to give, okay? Intentionally give, okay? So that's one way of working up the drill. Okay, and working confidence and building it with somebody that has less experience on this. Okay, and then when they're comfortable, when they're ready, or maybe even before they're comfortable and they don't know they're ready. Okay, everything that we do has to be drilled or has to work in full resistance type scenarios. Okay, it has to work in the idea that, okay, I don't want this person to escape. Okay, I'm doing everything I can to hold you in position right there. Now, check this out though. Even though somebody's giving full resistance, okay, even though I'm sitting there thinking I'm defending all 4 of the possibilities right there, UPA left, UPA right, elbow escape left, elbow escape right, the truth of the matter is when I commit to one of my defenses, okay, or my offenses or holding on to the position, when I commit to stopping one of those defenses, something else is always going to open up. In this way, as we're gradually building up, I actually don't think of full resistance drills as being any different than partial resistance drills. Okay, there's always going to be that opportunity that opens up no matter what level of resistance my opponent comes up on. Okay, so there's always an opportunity that comes up right there, and it's my job to go ahead and try to find that opportunity and know when something I'm doing is worth pursuing or when I have to abandon it because they've been recognized they're making their defense and I move on to something else. Okay, so full resistance drills, I don't want you to think of them as any different than partial resistance drills in that sense because there always is an opening. Granted, I'm going to say the difficulty level goes up, but I want you to go ahead and really think of that mindset right there, that there's always something that opens up. Okay, there's always a possibility. Okay, no matter what level of resistance you're going against, no matter who you're dealing with, there is always an opening. Okay, now I think I've talked about everything I wanted to cover right now in terms of low mount, in terms of elbow escapes, and how to combine elbow escapes and UPAs. And I think these are good drills that you can go ahead and work at home and with a partner, particularly if they've never even done jiu-jitsu before. okay? Really, we're focusing on keeping yourself safe, protect your face, neck, arms in position, and a little bit of knowledge about the position, okay? The way I always build things up is that safety, position, then finish. Like eventually we'll get to the finishes, and I think next week's classes we'll talk about a few of them. But if you don't understand how to keep yourself safe, if you don't understand how to maintain the positions, the finish is never going to come anyways, okay? So we're simply just working on safety and position for right now. And I think this is giving us some good drills, some good work, and giving you some stuff to work on at home before we get to the next class, okay? As always, thank you so much for joining us right now. We're going to continue working this. Oh, and if you're watching this live, we'll be doing a special Sofa Saturdays broadcast tomorrow night, which will be something a little bit different. Actually, something a lot different compared to what we're doing. Plus a Smash Brothers tournament. I'll make that announcement right there. If you have a Nintendo Switch, you can jump on, play along. I'll give you the information how to do that. You'll see, Trevor's here all the time right now teaching classes. You'll see me here next week. You'll see me here tomorrow. You'll see me online tomorrow. And hopefully we'll see you in person soon. But thank you so much for tuning and jumping in with us. Take care.